So then we are back with more understanding from the time of the Second Tabernacle services that we find in the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of the Israelic lineage, so then we can understand the time of the end. But Yoshiahu the prophet, then we find ourselves during the time of restoration and reduction. Restoration because of the cities of the Messiah then returning as per Yoshiahu the prophet, chapter 1:8. Explains then the time of restoration. With it comes also the understanding of then the trade of the end. So during this time, when we find ourselves then readjusting because of the holy tabernacling returning, we find then governments giving away their powers for tabernacling. It does not mean they won't exercise anymore their functions. Simply means the decision making is going to be primarily with the freighters of the earth. For these then taking place, we understand computerized system, it is the utmost importance. So let's say, for instance, those countries very outdated with older information from 50 years ago, and those old junky ways and outdated ways of doing trade, those must be gone. There is no questioning. Regarding the new system, the subsystems must be updated. We can understand in the very near future, elderly people, for instance, depending upon the government, they may not have checks coming anymore. They have to understand then computerized systems so they can receive the funding via computer. The world is changing very fastly. We can't have anymore the 50s in a system where it does not let the 50s lifestyle of government. A person can have a lifestyle of the 50, but not government-wise. Government-wise must be updated very fastly. Because the Messiah has stated the freighters of the earth in charge, we must start understanding what it means. Government and freighters and the relationship. How does it link then freighters with the government? You begin your understanding then, what do you understand of freighting? Freighters. When you buy a product online, and this is what is important, product online, you have to understand the principles of freighting. So those people who are very old, or those people that are lazy of not wanting to learn new systems, those people have to relinquish their uncomfortable side and learn the new ways. It does not mean they're going to live as the new ways, but they have to understand how it works. So they must submit to this new system, though they can live as they used to live in the past. The situation is, if an update does not take place, the country then is ruined. And then you find elderly people, after the system is ruined, wanting their checks. You know, bad news. They won't have checks for you. The system must maintain itself active for you to receive your check. Understanding then these times where then the trade of the world is lining up for the Asian market. Let's understand the importance of upgrading our system so we can line up trade of our country with a new system coming. It does not mean people are going to change their personal lifestyles. That's not the point. The point is, the treatment of a government is not the same as it was in the 50s. Neither in the 60s or 70s or 80s or the 90s or 2000 until 2009. At this time, we are preparing ourselves for the Asian market. So countries are upgrading their systems. So must we. So then, when we began our quest of understanding government lining up with freighting, then we understand is related with parcels, related with shipments, related with containers. The Messiah is indicating no longer governments of the world. When the Messiah observes the prophecy of himself from tabernacling, he observes freighters in charge. There is a local government where there is then country. Understandable. If the subsystem is then maintained properly. Our system in America is outdated and the country is not producing. So if you are an older person and you don't understand that the country is in deficit, the country is not earning, the country is not producing, if you don't understand the importance of upgrading our system, then you are an older person retarded. So let's make sure that you understand. In order for a subsystem is a second system. You understand, the new system coming from China is the main system of the world. Our subsystem, what we have thus far as government, it is outdated and is not producing. Generation of money, printing of money must match the market for then the system to become active. We have 36 months to get our system lined up and exact. The only way of doing this from the viewpoint of the new system coming is by tracking, labeling. So then freighters, when they produce labels for freighting, every time there is a product, there is a description, there is a price, deduction of taxes, instantly. When we maintain this system of ours, balanced with what we produce versus what we can spend, then we have a balanced subsystem. Then when the new Chinese system is available, where people can download on their computers and invest, then our system, known as subsystem prior of this coming of the Chinese system, then becomes a subsystem, then our subsystem becomes balanced. If we don't do this, then we must adopt the Chinese system as our own. Means the US money no longer exists. We have to deal with yen. So then, if we have a problem with this, we must then have a subsystem balanced. So then when you read the information from New Zealand, from Australia, from the countries of the Pacific, if you hear very intently, you find then their subsystems. In other words, their existing system being upgraded. This means backlogs, their existing systems being upgraded, so then they can make sure their balances are then positive. When the new system of the Chinese comes, then they have a balanced subsystem where they can maintain their expenses as the country invests in the new system. Because we are no longer part of the world system. We became a sub-country. Per prophecy, we understand there is the kingdom of the north. We find in the Soviet Union. The kingdom of the east, China. and yet birthing the kingdom of the south. Those are the main components of the base of the statue. Daniel 11. The rest of us, we are working. And then the plans, except China, the rest of the world making plans flows through the Soviet Union for proper selection. From there then goes to China. Thus we understand then the Soviet Union having a grander kingdom than the former because of much equipment. Then you understand transportation, mining, and making then the southern kingdom also prosperous. And the rest of us, it's work. Log on the system, invest your money, go to work. It's an electronic age, a time of trade, a time where governments are going to be aside. You won't hear anymore of governments. You are going to hear of groups of people from country to country where their decisions are not very relevant. And the relevant information from these places must line up with what the freighters want. So then when we read the understanding of the Messiah, we must understand the Messiah from tabernacling, and the world does not understand tabernacling yet. Tabernacling is not ready yet. But when it is, we find the Messiah speaking from the future, and he observes freighters of the earth. The Messiah senses the power coming from the freighters, no longer governments. But governments, being very lean, they are going to be in line with the freighters. So then the power flows through then the freighters. The government are then in line. The governments are then in line with freighting because of the tracking system. So then we understand what is going to be. There will be governments, but tiny groups of people, very lean, working in conjunction with the freighters of the earth. Then we find the first, second, and third kingdoms only. Those are the main players of the time of the end. So let's understand we have a clear picture of what was the time of deceit, what the world thought was the new order versus tabernacling. The world has believed a scripture absolutely scandalized, translated from pagan viewpoint, because they were not paying taxes. Now we find taxes being taken care of. You find the Creator giving time of 36 months per predictions of a very important department, IMF. You find a time given prior of the starting of this new system, where the freighters are going to be in charge. Retailers nearly non-existent. That's why if you have observed and watched the news, because if you're an elderly person not watching television, not watching the news, don't understand the computer, then you ought to be retarded. You don't fit in this new age, this new era. And what you know of the past does not help the situation. You may had in the past trustworthy people, understandable, but it's not the point only being trustworthy. You have to have the knowledge of the new system coming. So then if you are trustworthy, you have to combine with the specific knowledge of the new time. Then the whole becomes worthy. Otherwise, you are then a hindrance rather than a help. So let's understand and make sure people are acquainted of the time of the dragon, where our country no longer is going to give opinions. Let's make sure we understand the original scripture, because the Messiah spoke from the Holy of Holies while there was tabernacling in the earth per instructions. We are during a time where tabernacling is returning. So the words of the Messiah are extremely important from his viewpoint. So when we understand being below, then we understand our time is how it's going to be played. The freighters of the earth, then, they are in charge. Governments are in line with the freighters. This means governments of the world, they are going to give their power to the freighters. As the freighters, they earn, governments, they earn. Do you understand? So when the Messiah observes from tabernacling, he observes the power of movement, the power of trade given freighters, where people, they are responsible. They invest, they receive, they purchase, they receive, they invest, they receive, they purchase, they receive, continuously. Thus then we understand a time of restoration of the holy cities. So please stay tuned, much more coming up.